The world first met Muhammad Ali as a force that refused to be ignored. He didn't wait for permission to be great. He announced it. His confidence arrived before his punches, filling arenas and conversations alike. People were drawn to the certainty in his voice and the ease in his movement. From the beginning, Ali felt larger than sport. Applause followed him as naturally as breath. He fought in a way heavyweights were never expected to fight. Light on his feet, quick in his hands, playful yet precise. Each victory felt like confirmation that the rules no longer applied to him. The crowd didn't just watch him win, they watched him redefine what winning looked like. Greatness in Ali's world was something you claimed openly. His words became as famous as his knockouts. He predicted rounds, mocked opponents, and turned press conferences into performances. People laughed, argued, and repeated his lines long after fights ended. The noise around him grew louder with every appearance. Applause became constant, and silence became rare. The public learned to associate Ali with certainty. He spoke as if doubt had never introduced itself to him. Every statement sounded final. Every prediction absolute. That confidence reassured people who wanted heroes without hesitation. The world applauded not just his skill, but his refusal to appear unsure. Victory after victory reinforced the image. Titles came and went, but the belief in his invincibility only grew. Fans didn't just expect him to win, they expected him to dominate, even defeat. When it came, failed to quiet the legend. The applause simply adjusted, growing more defensive, more loyal. Ali's presence reshaped boxing into spectacle. Fights were no longer just contests. They were events layered with meaning and drama. Crowds felt they were witnessing history, not sport. The ring became a stage, and Ali its most commanding performer. Applause fed the momentum. Media amplified everything. Cameras lingered on his smile. Microphones chased his words. Headlines reduced complex moments into bold quotes. Over time, repetition hardened these moments into identity. Ali became the man the world thought it fully understood. The applause did more than celebrate him. It defined him. People saw what they expected to see because expectation shaped attention. Confidence was visible. Reflection was not. The legend grew louder as nuance faded. Ali learned to live inside that applause. It shaped how rooms reacted when he entered. It influenced how questions were asked and how answers were received. Even when he spoke casually, his words carried weight. Applause followed habitually. The world treated him as unbreakable. Strength became assumption rather than effort. Few considered the cost of sustaining that image. When someone appears powerful constantly, observers stop allowing them vulnerability. Applause can be limiting that way. For many, Ali represented certainty in uncertain times. His confidence offered comfort. His dominance suggested order. People wanted to believe greatness could be loud, clear, and unshaken. Ali fit that desire perfectly. He was praised for refusing restraint. Loudness was interpreted as authenticity. Defiance was celebrated as courage. The more unapologetic he appeared, the more the crowd rewarded him. Applause reinforced behavior without question. The champion the world applauded seemed complete. There appeared to be no missing pieces. Success looked effortless from a distance. That illusion made it easy to forget that every performance requires maintenance. Applause hides fatigue. Ali's public self became a symbol. Others leaned on. People projected meaning onto him. Strength, rebellion, pride. Those projections solidified his image further. The man himself became secondary to what he represented. The noise around him grew so constant that it drowned out quieter possibilities. No one asked what Ali might be when the applause stopped. The idea felt unnecessary. Legends, after all, are not supposed to change. He carried expectation into every space. Even ordinary moments felt observed. The applause trained him to respond a certain way. Confidence became reflex rather than choice. That reflex served him well, but it also narrowed perception. The world rewarded certainty, so certainty multiplied. Each affirmation strengthened the persona. The gap between the man and the image widened slowly, almost invisibly. Few noticed because applause filled the space between. Ali mastered the role he was applauded for. He understood timing, spectacle, and presence. That mastery made the role feel natural. It also made it harder to step outside it without confusing others. The champion the world applauded lived in highlight reels and sound bites. That version felt permanent, almost timeless. People assumed it would never fade. Applause creates that illusion. Yet beneath the roar existed a life still unfolding, a life that would eventually ask different questions, a life not fully captured by cheers or belts. The applause marked the beginning of the story, but it was not the whole of it. This section of Ali's life defined how he was first remembered: loud, confident, unapologetic. It set the foundation for the legend, but it also set the stage for a lesson that could only be learned once the applause began to fade. As the years passed, Muhammad Ali began to notice a shift that no opponent could challenge. Time moved without asking for permission. His body no longer responded the way it once had, and routines that felt natural before now required intention. This change did not arrive dramatically. It crept in quietly day by day. What made it powerful was that it could not be confronted with speed or confidence. The ring, once the center of his life, slowly became a memory rather than a destination. Training sessions shortened. Recovery took longer. The rhythm that had structured his days began to loosen. Without realizing it, at first, Ali was being introduced to a different pace of living. For the first time, effort did not guarantee control. No amount of willpower could restore what time was taking. This was unfamiliar territory for someone who had built his life on mastery. The absence of control forced him to listen instead of assert. That listening changed everything. His voice, once effortless and commanding, softened. Words carried differently now, not because they lacked power, but because they were chosen more carefully. Speaking less revealed how much he had once relied on sound to shape moments. Quiet became unavoidable. Ali began to experience stillness, not as rest but as reality. Movement had always been his refuge. Now stillness arrived, whether he welcomed it or not. Sitting with it felt uncomfortable. At first, like standing still in a world that expected motion. Time asked questions that no reporter ever had. Questions without microphones. Questions without answers that could be delivered confidently. These questions lived in silence and waited patiently. Ali could not rush past them. He noticed how people responded differently. Some leaned closer. Others pulled away. Without the familiar energy. Expectations shifted. He was no longer the man everyone assumed would dominate every moment. That change unsettled both him and those around him. The slowing forced reflection. Memories surfaced without invitation. Moments of triumph appeared alongside moments of doubt. The past no longer arrived as highlight reels, but as layered experiences. This depth changed how he remembered himself. Ali realized that speed had once shielded him from certain thoughts. As long as he kept moving, reflection could be postponed. Time removed that option. Reflection became part of daily life rather than a rare pause. There was humility in recognizing limits, not humiliation but awareness. He learned that acknowledging change did not erase greatness. It reframed it. Strength did not vanish. It transformed. The world still saw a legend. Ali felt the gap between that perception and his lived reality. Bridging that gap required patience. He learned to let others hold their image while he held his truth. Illness deepened the conversation. Time had started. The body became an instructor, setting boundaries he could not negotiate. These boundaries taught him attentiveness. Every action carried intention. Ali began measuring days differently. Not by accomplishment, but by presence. Not by noise, but by alignment. This new measurement felt unfamiliar, yet grounding. It offered clarity rather than validation. He noticed that certainty no longer felt necessary. Earlier in life, certainty had been armor. Now it felt optional. Allowing uncertainty did not weaken him. It softened resistance. That softness created space for understanding. Time stripped away urgency. What once demanded immediate response now invited patience. Ali found that waiting often revealed more than reacting. This lesson repeated itself quietly. He understood that identity is not fixed. It evolves as circumstances change. Holding on to an old version too tightly creates tension. Letting it adapt creates peace. This realization did not come easily, but it stayed. Ali saw how much of his confidence had been outward-facing. Now confidence needed to be inward-facing to survive. Trusting himself without applause became essential. That trust grew slowly. He learned to sit with moments without trying to shape them. Conversations unfolded differently. Silence became part of communication. People adjusted, and so did he. Time also reframed success. Success was no longer defined by winning exchanges or commanding attention. It was defined by coherence. How well his actions matched his values, that alignment mattered deeply. Ali realized that the ring had taught him discipline, but time was teaching him wisdom. Discipline thrives on repetition. Wisdom thrives on awareness. This distinction clarified his path forward. The slowing of life did not end his story. It deepened it by changing the conversation. Time prepared him for a lesson that could only be learned once the noise receded, and in that quieter space, Muhammad Ali began to listen in a way he never had before. The lesson Muhammad Ali learned did not arrive with drama or announcement. There was no single moment that marked its beginning. It unfolded quietly, layered through reflection, rather than experience in the ring. By the time Ali recognized it fully, it had already reshaped how he saw himself. That realization came too late to be performed, but early enough to matter. For most of his life, Ali believed greatness had to be demonstrated outwardly. Strength needed to be seen. Confidence needed to be heard. The lesson challenged that belief at its foundation. It suggested that what lasts longest is not what draws the loudest response. He realized that power fades when it is built only on dominance. Speed slows, voices soften, applause shifts elsewhere, but character once formed remains present even when everything else changes. That distinction became impossible to ignore. The lesson showed him that words, when used too often, lose precision. He had mastered language as a tool, but tools wear down with overuse. Silence, by contrast, retained its sharpness. When chosen deliberately, it carried more meaning than constant speech. Ali understood that restraint is not something you practice when you lack strength. It is something you choose when you have strength but no longer need to prove it. That choice required a level of confidence he had not known before. It felt different from bravado. He began to see that ego often disguises itself as courage. Speaking first can feel brave. Reacting quickly can feel decisive. But those instincts sometimes protect pride rather than truth. The lesson invited him to pause before acting. What he learned reframed how he interpreted past moments. Victories felt less absolute. Losses felt less defining. Each experience became part of a larger pattern rather than an isolated event. This perspective softened the edges of memory. The lesson also changed how he viewed conflict. Conflict no longer demanded resolution through force or persuasion. Sometimes it required distance. Sometimes it required patience. Sometimes it required nothing at all. Knowing the difference became essential. Ali realized that maturity often involves subtraction rather than addition. Speaking less, reacting less, proving less. This reduction did not diminish him. It clarified him. What remained felt more aligned with who he was becoming. He recognized that influence does not depend on visibility. People watched how he handled moments of tension quietly. They learned from his restraint without being told what to learn. Teaching without instruction felt powerful. The lesson also revealed how much energy performance consumes. Performing requires anticipation, timing, and constant awareness of perception. Letting go of that demand freed energy. He could redirect inward. That inward focus felt restorative. Ali saw that listening can be an act of leadership. When he stopped filling silence, others spoke more honestly. Conversations deepened. The absence of dominance allowed connection. This dynamic surprised him. He understood that wisdom often arrives after opportunity has passed, not as punishment but as perspective. What cannot be applied immediately can still guide the future. The lesson reshaped how he approached the time he had left. The realization changed how he interpreted respect. Respect no longer came from fear or admiration alone. It came from consistency and calm. People trusted what did not fluctuate wildly. Stability became its own form of authority. Ali learned that humility is not self-erasure, it is accuracy, seeing oneself clearly without exaggeration or denial. That clarity felt grounding. It removed the pressure to maintain an image. The lesson also redefined victory. Victory was no longer winning exchanges. It was preserving integrity under pressure. It was choosing responses that aligned with values rather than impulse. that victory felt quieter but deeper. He noticed that peace followed alignment. When actions matched internal understanding, tension reduced. Decisions felt simpler. Regret lost its hold. The lesson simplified life in ways success never had. Ali realized that this understanding could not have arrived earlier. Youth requires assertion. Competition rewards dominance. Reflection needs distance. The timing, though late, felt appropriate. He accepted that the lesson did not need validation. It did not need to be shared loudly or defended. Living it was enough. Its impact would be seen, not announced. The lesson also softened his relationship with legacy. Legacy was no longer something to build aggressively. It would form naturally through example. Trusting that process felt liberating. He saw that silence could be intentional rather than empty, chosen rather than imposed. In that choice lived autonomy. Silence became a tool, not a void. By the time Ali fully embraced what he had learned, the world had already formed its memory of him. But the lesson changed how he carried that memory. It shifted how he lived within it, and in doing so, it quietly prepared the ground for a different kind of remembrance. One shaped not by performance, but by understanding. As the lesson settled, Muhammad Ali began to respond to the world in ways that surprised those who thought they knew him. The sharp comebacks grew rarer. The instant reactions slowed. What replaced them was a steady calm that felt intentional rather than passive. People noticed the change even if they couldn't explain it. Situations that once would have sparked confrontation now met restraint. Ali no longer felt compelled to dominate every moment. He allowed conversations to unfold without steering them toward performance. This choice shifted the energy in rooms he entered. Calm began to set the tone. Insults, when they came, no longer demanded replies. Earlier in life, he would have dismantled them with words. Now he often let them pass untouched. That silence unsettled others more than any rebuttal ever had. It revealed confidence without aggression. Praise also lost its urgency. Compliments no longer required acknowledgement or reinforcement. Ali accepted them quietly, without building on them. This refusal to perform surprised admirers who expected spectacle. It signaled that his sense of worth no longer depended on reaction. He discovered that restraint carries its own authority. When he spoke less, people leaned in more. When he paused, others reflected. The absence of excess allowed meaning to surface naturally. Silence created space rather than emptiness. Ali learned to wait before responding, not out of hesitation, but out of discernment. He understood that not every moment deserved his energy. Choosing when not to engage became as important as choosing when to act. This selectivity preserved focus. The shift also brought humility without loss of dignity. Ali did not diminish himself, he clarified himself. He understood that humility is not silence imposed by fear, but silence chosen by awareness. That distinction mattered deeply. He noticed how people adjusted around him. Conversations slowed, voices softened. Even disagreements became less heated. His restraint modeled a different way of being present. Others followed without instruction. Ali realized that reacting less allowed him to observe more. He saw patterns in behavior, emotion, and intention that had once been obscured by noise. Observation replaced impulse. Understanding replaced defense. This new way of responding required patience. Old habits surfaced at times, tempting him to perform, but each moment of restraint reinforced the lesson. Over time, calm became natural rather than deliberate. He understood that strength expressed quietly often lasts longer. Loud dominance fades quickly. Quiet steadiness remains. This realization changed how he evaluated his own influence. Ali also recognized that not correcting others can be an act of wisdom. Allowing people to reveal themselves removed the need for explanation. Silence let truth surface on its own. This approach conserved energy and preserved clarity. He began to trust that respect did not need to be demanded. It followed consistency, by responding with dignity regardless of circumstance. He established reliability. People knew what to expect from him, and that predictability built trust. The lesson reshaped his sense of control. Control no longer meant directing outcomes. It meant governing response. That internal control felt more stable than any external victory. Ali noticed that peace followed restraint. Conflict de-escalated more often than it escalated. Relationships felt less strained. This peace was not passive. It was earned through awareness. He also learned to forgive without announcement. Letting go quietly freed him from carrying resentment. Forgiveness became an internal process rather than a public gesture. That privacy made it sincere. Moments of misunderstanding still occurred. Silence was sometimes misread as weakness. Ali allowed those misinterpretations to exist. Correcting them felt unnecessary. Living aligned with his values mattered more. He recognized that leadership can be nonverbal. How one handles pressure teaches others what matters. His restraint communicated boundaries more clearly than confrontation ever could. This way of responding matured his presence. He occupied space without filling it. He influenced without insisting. This subtle authority felt more authentic than earlier dominance. Ali understood that choosing wisdom over reaction did not erase his past. It integrated. The fighter remained part of him, but no longer defined him entirely. The lesson allowed growth without denial. By responding differently, Ali reshaped how people experienced him. They remembered not just his words or victories, but his composure. That composure became part of his identity. In choosing wisdom over reaction, Muhammad Ali demonstrated that evolution is itself a form of strength. The loud champion had learned when quiet was enough, and in that choice his life moved closer to the legacy that would ultimately define how he was remembered.